All right. We had a conversation last week in Teams. Uh, in the event that you missed the meeting, which is fine, it's one of those things that I try to do those so that if you have questions about the lab, you can certainly join us. But here is the essence of what I talked about. So we're going to kind of step through where the labs are. I think I've already shown it, but it doesn't hurt to have some redundancy here. Also, I've been through all the CDC uh, assignments, and again, these are for certificates. Uh, I would highly recommend that you do these just so that you have those certificates, and I will reward you with some points to add to your grade. But if you don't do them, it won't hurt your grade. Okay, so the idea is I want to try to develop a win-win, and we'll go from there. All right, so the labs that we've done is lab 1 and 2, and it was really designed for two things. One was for you to explore it on your own, and the idea is that you get familiar with the e-science and where things are and how it rolls. And so when you start through the video or the presentation, I guess is the best way, you click through it, and then it takes you to exercises at the end where you do various things. It gives you the instructions. It's really straightforward. I wanted you to experience that. It did have some assignments, and it looks like the majority have done those, and I'm real pleased. They are straightforward. So I posted the answers for Lab 1 and 2 just so you can compare with what you've done. What I don't want you to do is to think that you had it right, but it's actually wrong or it was incomplete. And if for some uncanny reason that maybe some aspect of that would be asked on the lab practical, you will be on top of it. So I try to do that for these. Now, if you haven't done the lab and you see the answers there, go ahead and do the lab first and then check it. Check your answers. You can submit it. The work is just so that I get some kind of feedback how my students are doing. The eScience, they told us that those were self-sufficient laboratories, and we really didn't need to do much more instruction, although I did a voiceover just to try to help walk you through it as far as where it is and what they're expecting and kind of explaining a little bit. I don't know if it was helpful or not. Some folks say it has and some say it hasn't. So, and that's kind of like horse racing, I guess. Okay, so this week we're going to be looking at Lab 3, the introduction to the microscope. Boy, I don't know why it added all the funkiness to it, but that's okay. It's all there. Uh, in Lab 3, they have you step through utilizing a virtual microscope. And I realize the virtual microscope is just that, virtual. I would more than love to have you utilize a real microscope. I'm going to try to step you through using my scope, and I will post that as soon as I can between all the grading and getting the lab set and the lecture set. Sure is a lot for one person. I don't know how they expect online to be done with one person, but lest I digress. So here we are. So review, I did an instructor write-up getting to know your microscope, and please read through that. Those are my tips, and like I'm going to go over that as I go over the microscope with you. But that's not a bad thing to keep with you. Those are about 30 years of my experience using scopes. I always want students to have a good experience with a microscope, not a bad one. And then there's CDC training module on routine microscopy, and there is a setup for it. You have to log on. As I say, I've done it. It's a little bit tricky. Just be persistent. You'll get there. Now these are optional. You don't have to do this, but I will reward you with points that will help boost your grade. Now it's just points. It's not extra credit. If you don't do it, it's not going to hurt you. If you do it, you get the points. That's all, and you get a certificate from CDC. So that's not a bad deal. And then in lab 5, I threw these two together, which makes all the sense in the world, because in order to see things with microscopy, you have to stain. And staining is really straightforward. Your kits have all that. And here's the deal. You stain with a gram stain. And if you like, for me to do photography of your slide, I will give you my home address and you can email me. Now you have to package the slide in one of those cardboard type folders so they don't get broken. It won't cost much. I think it's pretty much standard if you use USPS mailing. And I would be glad to put it up on my scope. I'll take pictures and then I'll send you the pictures of your first gram stain or whatever you want. Now I do that in the lab on kind of a regular basis, but obviously we're not in the lab. But we still can do that. So if you want to send me a gram stain, I will post my home address so you can do that. No bombs, please. Thank you. All right. Then the week after that, the week after this week, which is next week. So today is, what is the date today? It is 6/22, just to give you reference if whenever you watch the video. Which dates it means that I have to do these videos. But you know what? These videos are for you, and it isn't to make my life easier. It's to make your life easier. So next week, we're going to start reviewing, getting ready for the midterm lab, which will be at the end of that week, going into the weekend. So I'm not going to. I'll be really flexible as to how much time you have to do it. Then we do lab 4, 6, and 7. That's culturing and aseptic technique. That's a biggie. I spent some time going over pointers, tips. I use my Bunsen burner, and I will give you some documents that you can download that show you where the area around a Bunsen burner is the best or ideal for working, the type of flame that you want on your Bunsen burner. We're going to go over all that, even how to strike a flame, and I'll explain about that as well. Growth of microorganisms, we can do various things to affect the growth and the types of organisms that we grow. And then the quantitation of cultured microorganisms, we can do direct counts, and we go over a document I prepared called Solutions and Delusions, and I try to make that stuff really easy. In fact, the math is so simple you don't even have to take your shoes off to do the math. So I give you some worksheets, but this is a microbiology thing. When we want to know how many are in a culture or whatever, we do a series of dilutions, and that helps us to determine with the number of cells that are growing colonies on a plate, and then you factor in your dilution, and then you know. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. And so that's the week after that. And then week 7, which is 1 week before we're done, I'm going to talk about selective media and differential types of media and things. This is all about how to identify unknowns and that sort of thing, and I'm going to go over that. The eScience segments are really good on it. You can follow the labs. I really don't see how much more I can do about their labs, but I will do a video on my details that are not covered in those labs to help you think about identifying unknown bacteria. And then we'll review on the 8th week. There won't be any lab work unless you have to finish up stuff. I'm going to review on lab practicals, and what I'm going to do for lab practical 1 and 2 reviews, I will hold a team session, and you'll have some practice questions that you will have worked, and I'm just there to answer any questions that you might have. Okay, so that's the lab part. And how the labs are organized, just to kind of show you, is that you go to the online laboratory section, and when you do that, like, you'll see this listing, and then week 1, week 2, just pretty much like the lessons. I try to keep consistency here. So when you do that, and I'm going to give you an example using the microscope. And this is how that particular lab will be done. So you go to the online, and it actually is week 4 because of the kit debacle. I moved it to week 4, which is this week. I was going to try to slide it in on week 3, but that's not fair to have you guys working on that stuff for the weekend, especially it's Father's Day, and um, I did a lot of yard work and stuff. That was my time off, I guess. I don't know. So week 4, it will say, but when you click on that week, you'll see all the various things: the reading assignments, instructor modules, assignments, quizzes, additional support materials. Very much similar to the lessons area that I've already done for you. So I was hoping that there's enough analogies or straightforwardness. So when you click on like reading assignments, it's the same sort of bullseye, and the various things and the documents are there, and supportive type of documents, just like I've done in the lessons area, trying to keep that consistent. Now, if you go into the instructor modules, and when you click on that, it lists those. So when you click on these things, unless there's a particular need, they don't go anywhere. And these are self-contained. That's why I did it this way. Is it really, if there's material for you to see, you'll see it. There's nothing hidden. This is the farthest as we go as far as drilling. So when you see here, if there's clicks, and there may be a video click and things that I'm going to add. So I'm going to go over, starting with the microscope, with a real scope on my desk with my cameras. So you'll see not only the outside of it, but you'll actually see, because it has a camera on board, you can see what I'm actually looking at the same time, I hope. And you'll hopefully enjoy that. And that's what my plan is. So I'm going to go over and how to adjust and get the focus, and you'll see it. And working with prepared slides, and how we set those up, and how we consistently get looking at bacteria, not air bubbles or hairs or dog saliva, whatever is on the slide. I want you to see the real microbiology of it. Now, you're at a disadvantage, yes, without a scope, but the next best thing to being there is what I'm going to try to do and show you with my scope. Other sections, in addition, are just like what we had in lessons area, and you can go in, and after the lab starts, any of the labs that we do, there'll be one in red, and it's answers and follow-ups to this lab. These are the answers to the e-science labs that are embedded in the lab, where they have you turn them in to me, and I give you credit. Now, the only reason I'm having you turn them in, other than just recognize that you do it, is that you found it, and you did it fine. This is not something that is a big deal in terms of grades and things. The big deal on the grades is the lab practicals. These things are designed to help you understand the material so you do well in the lab practical. Now, that's why I'm really flexible on these assignments now. But if you wing it and don't decide to do the assignments, it will hurt you from the standpoint you won't do as well in the lab practical. I try to set these up. The e-science folks do a very good job in their explanations and having things. And in addition to the materials that they give you, I try to give you some of my instructor modules that help. You got some lab quizzes or practice lab practicals questions and things like that I try to do. And then maybe some additional assignments that they're in there if you want to look or dig in. It depends on if you're having trouble. And of course, you can always email me, and I'd be glad to get back to you. So that's what's going on with these the labs. And this video is really nothing more than what I discussed during teams, and in addition to some other just logistics that really wasn't important. But I hope this was helpful. All of the labs will follow this sort of flow, and I try to be consistent with what we've done in the lessons area, so there's not really a whole lot new. If you're clicking and you're seeing blank screens, you need to back up one screen, because that's all there is. on that front page. Those are called modules, and those modules are self-contained. That's why I didn't want you to have to keep drilling and drilling and drilling. So a lot of these, if I go back here a sec, those would be in the instructor modules. These are self-contained pages. There's no need to go and click up here to take you deeper. All that information is presented right there. This is an outline of the work that's presented on these modules. I did it that way so that sort of like it's the basement. There is no further clicking as far as in the assignment area or whatever in the instructor modules. So those are modules, and you can see the page. This is an icon. The way a Blackboard is set up, it's subtle, I know, but the icons, if you see a page, that's a module page. That's it. There's no more clicking you have to do. It's all presented for you. And so I just wanted to point that out. Now, in the module pages, reading assignments and things, you'll see underlined very standard things for links. You can click those. I have, maybe a microscope label thing you can download so you can print it out for yourself. Getting to know your microscope's a document and downloads it, and those sorts of things. And there's nothing new there. All of those things are consistent with the lessons area. So I hope this was helpful, and I prepared this so that as we move forward in the labs, because we're moving fast, and unfortunately the East Science just wasn't there for us on those kits. But you know what? It doesn't matter. We're going to push through, and we're going to make it better than it was originally. And we'll get done with this, and you'll be happy. Life is good, and you'll make $1 million, and you'll share it with me someday. Thank you. Have a great day.